Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, dear colleagues, depending where you are, from where you are joining us. My name is Kseniya Kizilova. I'm chair of the Liaison Committee at WAPOR, and I will be moderating our today's webinar. I'm very happy to welcome you at our October next monthly webinar, which is organized by the World Association for Public Opinion Research. And today we have a very interesting topic for discussion. We will speak about the newest trends, challenges, methodological innovations, but also the newest findings from the electoral surveys in Central and Eastern Europe. This region is in fact quite diverse, and when planning this webinar, we tried to make sure that this diversity in terms of both peculiarities of historical and political development, democratization, trends, indicators of electoral integrity is well reflected in those cases which will be presented to you today. And in the focus of our webinar, we have today 4 countries in total. 2 of them are representing Central Europe. These are Czech Republic and Poland, and 2 countries are representing Eastern Europe. These are the cases of Russia and Georgia. All 4 countries had their latest national elections already. After the start of the pandemic, Georgia and Poland had the elections last year, one parliamentary, the other one presidential. Russia and Czech Republic had their parliamentary elections most recently, just in September, October this year. And thus we'll be also able to learn from this newest experience how the dynamics of the pandemic, those communication and mobility restrictions imposed during the quarantines might have affected the practice of electoral surveys in this region. Today we have 4 really brilliant, outstanding speakers whom I will introduce to you just in a moment. Before this, let me please make a small announcement. In case if you're not aware about it yet, next week WAPOR will be holding our annual conference, which will take place online between November the 2nd and the 6th. The registration to this conference is still open until Sunday, October the 31st. And you are most welcome to register and to join us for this event. It will be a 4-day conference and 1 day of training workshops. And now back to our today's program. We are very happy to have with us today as the first speaker, Paulina Tabery, who is the head of the Public Opinion Research Center at the Institute of Sociology of the Czech Academy of Sciences. Paulina's academic work focuses on opinion formation, interpersonal and media communication, survey instrument testing, political communication, and the quality of pre-election surveys. Paulina is also the national representative of WAPOR in the Czech Republic. We are very honored to have with us today also the director of the Levada Center, a Moscow-based independent sociological research organization, Denis Volkov. Denis has over 13 years of work experience at the Levada Center and was involved into more than 100 of quantitative and qualitative research projects on different aspects of Russian society. He has authored works on sources of political regime support, political attitudes of the Russian youth, protest activities and civil society, business and elites' opinion in Russia. We are also delighted today to be joined by Dr. Zarina Brokadze, who holds a doctoral degree in political sciences from the University of Zurich. Zarina is professor of political science at the Elias State University, and she is also Secretary General of the Georgian Association for Public Opinion Research. Her research interests include comparative politics, democratization, democracy promotion, and autocracy promotion. And our fourth speaker is a well-renowned political scientist from Poland, Mihalko Narovsky. He's professor at the Institute of Philosophy and Sociology of the Polish Academy of Sciences. Michal has many years of experience working in public opinion research domain, and he is also a member of the research team of Poland in many comparative survey research projects, including such famous projects as the European Social Survey and the Comparative Study of Electoral Systems project. And before I give the floor to the first speaker, let me please add that you also have a possibility to share your feedback, comments, or to ask your questions at the end of the webinar after all 4 speakers have delivered their talks. You can ask your questions orally by raising your hand, or alternatively, you can write them directly during the webinar using the chat box or the Q&A function in Zoom. We will make sure to review all questions received there, and by the end of the webinar, you will get an answer to your question. That's all from me now. I'm now giving the floor to Paulina, our first speaker for today.
Okay, thank you. I will start to share my screen so you can see the presentation. Now you should see the presentation. So
We do.
okay. Okay, in the presentation mode. So thank all of you that you coming here on the Friday afternoon to listen to the issue of pre-election polls in the Central and Eastern Europe. And my presentation has a very broad name. It's the changing landscape of pre-election service in the Czech Republic. But actually, I will focus only on two issues in this presentation. And I think both of them are really important and interesting for us in the Czech Republic. The first is a need for a self-regulation in the area of pre-election polls, and I will present you what kind of self-regulatory organizations organization we have, and what kind of body we have built to promote the professional standards and moreover the principles for the publication of election survey results. And of course, the second topic will be the changes in the mode of data collection, which are related to the COVID-19 pandemic, but also before the pandemic, we started to see the changes in the modes of the data collection. Just a brief context, in the Czech Republic, we have, of course, many types of elections, but in this presentation, I will focus on the general elections, which are elections to the Chamber of the Deputies of the Parliament of the Czech Republic, which is the lower chamber actually, and it occurs once every 4 years, the elections, and actually these are the most watched election, and most attention from pollsters is paid actually to these kind of elections. Most polling companies focus on these elections not only in the pre-election period, but throughout the whole inter-election period. So we have a time series of the estimates during the whole 4-year period. As Kseniya said a few minutes ago, the last elections to the lower house of the parliament were held now in October, so it's really fresh, the election results, and also the ideas what went wrong and what went right elections. And the last elections we had in October 2017. Just to give you an idea, the typical voter turnout is around 60%, 60 to 65. From of course, we are talking about the years after the 2000s. In the 90s, it was something different. And what is typical for the Czech Republic is that there's usually a large number of political parties running. In the elections 2021, it was 22 political entities, parties or coalition. In 2017, even 31. So you can imagine we have quite a hard job to make an estimate for all the parties. And there's an electoral threshold, the 5%, which is really critical, because that's the point where everybody, media and the public, is focused on which parties are going to be in the parliament and which are not. So it's a really hard pressure to be very precise and to have very precise estimates because of this threshold. And also, it's important, there is a ban on the publication of opinion polls. Actually, it's 3 days before the elections and during the whole elections, which are 2 days. So 5 days it's the ban. But it's very common that the polling companies add 1 more day to this ban. So it's usually a whole week from Monday till Sunday that the opinion polls are not published. I'm not sure why is that. Is it because all are very cautious about it, just not to interrupt, not to break the law, and not to interrupt the period of the ban. And it's a huge consensus about that. So how big is the market actually, and how many companies actually operate on the market? So we have several polling companies that regularly publish the results of pre-election polls a few months before the elections. Before the elections 2021, it was 6 companies, but throughout the whole period, inter-election period, usually you see the results from the four companies. And there are some well-known multinational companies like Kantar or Ipsos, or a smaller, and the rest are small companies operating mostly in the Czech Republic and in Slovakia, usually in both countries. And interesting is also how pre-election surveys are actually financed in the Czech Republic, because usually they are funded by the companies themselves. It's on the expenses of the companies. And it's not usual that the media commission the pre-election polls, or that the media will build a team with a polling company to take a series of the pre-election polls. However, there is one major commissioner, and that's Czech Television, which is a public service broadcaster. And the Czech television has a long tradition of collaboration with Kantar, and recently also with another polling company, Data Collect. This was a result. There are actually 2 reasons for that. One reason is to have a larger samples at the same time, and the second reason is there were a huge discussion if the estimates are accurate. So the second reason is actually the replication of the methodology to see whether the methodology is accurate and the estimates are correct. Before the 2021 elections, the situation has changed a bit, because the CNN Prima News commissioned 3 surveys, pre-election surveys in the last month. And one newspaper commissioned actually 1 survey, and that was it. All other surveys were in the pre-election poll were funded by the companies themselves. And quite a new phenomenon has emerged ahead of 2021 election, and that's the publication of polls commissioned by one political party. So that was not usual in the previous years, because it's usual that political parties commission the surveys, but it's not usual that they made them public and publicly available, and that they will try this way to somehow influence the public opinion. As I said, the first topic will be about a self-regulatory organization, because in recent years there was a huge need to somehow to regulate this the publication of the opinion polls, and CIMAR is a national organization which promotes professional standards and principles for the publication of election surveys, and CIMAR has established a working group for public opinion research. And the main issue or the main discussions are pre-election surveys and the accuracy of surveys and the methodology, etc. And this working group provides a platform for discussions between the members, but also non-members who are willing to talk to the members of the CIMAR. And we also created within the CIMAR a public opinion research passport, and that's a set of rules which information a company must provide when it publishes the outputs of the pre-election polls. And this passport is a huge help for us when we are communicating with media, because it really helps us to explain how should be such a pre-election poll published, what do you need to know when you publish such a opinion poll, and which polls are, let's say, trustworthy and which are not. And it gave us a sort of protection from fake surveys or let's say numbers which were somewhere on the social media, etc. And we can somehow deal with the different information on the social media. So this is really a huge help, and in recent years, it really somehow we work with the media to stress that it is really necessary that they look at the not only at the pictures and at the graphs, but also at they see the information, and that the transparency is really important. So just to give you an idea how this public opinion research passport looks like, these are all the information which are published with the results. And the basic one are the name of the company, the name of the one who commissioned the survey, number of respondents, mode of data collection, and date of data collection. And any other information like sampling method, representativeness, number of interviewers, or if the data were weighted or question worthy, etc., that can be also a part of this passport. But there are some compulsory and some optional information. And most of the all of the reputable actually polling companies do that and have this passport on their website, and with each the press release and release of the numbers. The second the second change we saw in this elections, from the elections 2017 till 2021, we saw a shift in the modes. In the 2017 elections, we saw almost all the data were collected face-to-face, and the quota sampling was used. And the only exception were the service from Kantar for the Czech television, where they were conducted by telephone with a probability sampling. And that was 2017, and till that time, the face-to-face was the main mode of data collection. What we see now is that there's much more variety in the data collection modes, and one reason is, and that was the pre-pandemic reason, that some part of the population were harder to achieve in face-to-face interviews. We saw that the samples are not as good as they were like 10 years ago, etc. And also the COVID-19 pandemic somehow just things just started to happen much faster, and that was maybe if the pandemic never happened, we would have a longer time or longer period in transition. Now it was really quickly transitioned to totally different modes. So we see a shift to online modes, telephone service, but also, and what we see really in the field are mixed mode surveys. That's what we see in pre-election polls. And there's a huge discussion about how to conduct opinion polls, because what we know in the Czech Republic that almost 25% of people over 18 are not regular internet users. So we just can't tell that that online panels, opt-in panels, but also probability panels would work for the pre-election service. And the internet use correlates with age. So the problem is that age is also linked to turnout and to voting behavior, that we see that older people are more likely to show up and they vote for different parties than younger people. So that's a huge challenge for pollsters to start to conduct a mixed mode surveys to have their estimates correct. The estimates or the models we use in the Czech Republic has very different designs, different procedures are used to determine the estimates. But what all the models have in common are four things. All the models work with a probability of voter turnout somehow. All ask, because in the Czech Republic we have a multi-party system, all ask whether the respondent is considering more than one party. We have to know that because that's a common condition. All of them apply past vote weights. This is a huge discussion about it. And all apply additional weights, especially if they are conducted online. And in addition to the estimates, the models, there are also published outputs such as preferences. That means how the parties are represented in the whole population, also including non-voters. And we are also looking at how what non-voters are thinking about the political parties. And then we have an alternative outputs as the electoral core or electoral potential. And that's something what we will discuss at the WAPOR conference, so or maybe later in after this webinar. So, and the last question is how accurate actually are the pre-election surveys in the Czech Republic? So as you can see in this table displays the 2017 situation, and you can see that it is somehow comparable with the average in the world. That we can see that that there are these deviations are not huge, but what actually happened happened in 2017, that the majority of the surveys were face-to-face. All of them has the same bias, and all of them somehow overestimated left-wing political parties such as Communist Party and the Social Democrats. And we examined what happened in 2017, and we examined the role of time, the shy voter hypothesis, etc. But we concluded that the survey mode was responsible for this systemic bias, and mainly it was the survey mode that overestimated, that was responsible for the overestimation of the left-wing parties. As you will see in 2021, it was a different situation. You can see that the majority of the surveys were collected in a mixed mode, sometimes even with 3 modes. And you can also see that there are somehow larger deviations from the election results. But the thing is that we don't have, there are not available all the opinion polls, also the polls from the week where there's a ban on the poll. But usually the companies after the election made those results available, so we can somehow investigate later why there are some inaccurate estimates. And the inaccurate estimates, what we know from the data we have, that was due to the underestimation of the winner of the election. Actually, I think there was a huge failure to estimate the winner. Nobody predicted the winner the right way. And also there was an overestimation of the Czech Pirate Party. So what we are trying to do now is to investigate the role of time, whether it's the time we will have in the next month available the opinion polls from the period before the week before the election, whether it was an overestimation of turnout for different socio-demographic groups, whether it was a differential turnout, and what was the role of the weighting on the past vote. Because what we've seen in the 2017 election, that was that the past vote weighting was responsible for the inaccuracies. The agencies who use the past vote weighting have worse estimates, or even if they have a good estimate, they would have even better if they wouldn't use the vote. So, and that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Pauline. This was really very, very informative. I think I didn't know so many things about elections in Czech Republic. We now move on to Denis Volkov, now move on to Russia. Denis can start sharing his screen. Those colleagues who joined us today for the webinar, you are most welcome to write your questions, your comments in the chat. Paulina can answer them there now or after the presentations orally.
Hello everyone. It's very good to be here with you tonight, and I'll try to speak a little bit about the situation with the electoral polling in Russia, and also try to share some results and comment on them, because what we do in Levada Center, we try to monitor the situation and try to make the data available to the public, but also not only the data, but analysis as well. So maybe I'll try to give it here today as well. But speaking of electoral polling, there is in Russia, there's three major sources of long-term trends, different surveys that provide, well, three companies actually, FOM, and Levada Center. FOM is all Russia's Center for Public Opinion, is a state-owned company. FOM, or Public Opinion Foundation, it's a private company but closely associated with the government. And Levada Center, we act as a NGO, and well, we keep our and see our goal just to share the results with the public. And these are three main sources of long-term surveys and long trends, not only about the elections, different aspects of society or public opinion, but electoral surveys as well. And we and Public Opinion Foundation, we do them in a face-to-face mode, though it was interrupted in 2020 because of COVID situation. I'll say a couple of words about it later. And the FOM, as we can at least see from their website, they're now using their mixed mode, telephone plus face-to-face, but not quite sure how it is done. So there is always the question of comparability of these trends, and actually in this time in electoral situation, our figures were showing some decline in support of ruling party, as well as other state institutions, and the other two firms were not showing that, at least to this extent. So good question whether it is happening. Of course, there is sometimes some discrepancies that we have can be explained by the differences in the wording, but not this time, because it was about the trends. So maybe it was something about different modes, because we still see we see in our surveys that telephone surveys provide well, several percent more to the ruling party and state institutions when we ask about it. So there is a question. Of course, there is a lot of different various smaller companies, centers, teams, even doing ad hoc electoral surveys, focus groups of various quality. Sometimes they are publishing the results, but this gives a lot of room for, I would say, different kind of manipulations, because many of these teams, centers quite often connected with different parties that try to inflate their importance. Here is also I put a couple of words about what we do in the sense of electoral surveys. So we have these general trends that we are publishing on the website, but also do surely ad hoc telephone surveys, street surveys, as well as other companies, focus groups, online, offline. As I understand, in Russia, we do not usually use online surveys for electoral purposes, partly because different online panels, they're very cautious and not always like to even associate themselves with political issues, just to be on a safe side. And still there is in Russia questions how representative online surveys are. There are still big questions with this. So you can surely use online survey in Russia already for marketing purposes, but not probably to electoral purposes. I also want to say a few words about the COVID effect. I'm not sure how whether it is whether COVID affected the electoral polling this year. This year we had Duma elections, elections on federal level. But of course we have different kind of regional and local elections happening every year. And last year there was a big effect the pandemic made on this whole field at the beginning of the year, first half of the year, and we and the companies who are doing these trend surveys, we were forced to go to turn to telephone surveys and our regular omnibus surveys. But then we went back to normal. And why we did this? There are several reasons which I would like to share with you. First, of course, it's keeping trends. So if we were doing polling for 30 years already, it's always tricky to change the method. And so in our trend surveys, we try not to do so. As long as possible, to keep to the same method. Because of course it's then the question of comparability, but also there is a reason of supporting the field, because Russia is a big country, 85 regions, and I would say there is not in every region we have many companies who do surveys and sociological research. They vary in quality, and the reason is that
I'm sorry to interrupt you, Denis. We
Yes?
still see your title slide. Maybe you are. I think
no,
you're
I'm
speaking
already.
about, but we still
Yes,
see
I'm
your first slide.
Well, I'm on my third slide actually.
Maybe you need to go down a little bit.
Okay.
Yes,
if
now
we
it
do
works.
it this way, okay, because
Yes.
in big screen it doesn't work. Okay.
Sorry.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. So if we are speaking of this supporting the field reason, so if we stop doing regular face-to-face surveys in across the regions, well, it can have effect that that in some regions our regional partners will just go out of business, because not every one of them were able to diversify during pandemic. So if we turn to telephone, we all turn to telephone in our regular surveys, then there will be no, we will not be able just to make a sometimes ad hoc representative survey across the whole country. So we have to bear this in mind. And of course, another reason that we saw the whole country was more or less back to normal already in 2020, because there is widespread COVID skepticism in Russia, which is, well, we see it not only in the respondents, in focus groups, for example. We have to, when we were doing offline focus groups in the beginning of this year, for example, we had to almost force people to put on masks, and particularly to ask them not to put down their mask during the groups. So in the respondents, for sure there is this COVID skepticism, but also in the with the interviewers, with the regional partners, we also see it, but partly I think because those who can't diversify and go online, because some regional partners were very quick going online in focus groups and different methods, but not all of them, and some just couldn't do this, and this is the problem. So it's very uneven across such a big country than Russia, and even in quality and even in methods that people can use, and of course it affects the overall work and electoral surveys as well. There are also political challenges to the electoral polling in Russia. One is that we experience ourselves, as we are an NGO, and according to this foreign agent law, which is not new, it is working for several years, where the polling and publishing the results of the polls is equal to politics or political activity. And as we, as a company working with companies, universities, organizations from abroad, we were put on this list, foreign agent list. And for so-called foreign agents, there is a ban on publishing polling results during the months of electoral campaign, official electoral campaign. It means that for 2 months prior to the election day, we do not publish, though we can make a poll, but could not publish the result. And this, what does it mean? It means that a lack of information about the elections, because two other major firms, they are closely connected to the government, and so they choose what to publish and what not to publish. So we during this campaign, a federal campaign, there was certain lack of electoral information. There were some general trends which were published, but not that much information about what was going on. And so we see that there is, of course, a lot of activities that was going on for private purposes or for purposes of the authorities, but lack of public and expert scrutiny to this kind of surveys. And rise of different fakes and speculations that we saw. All kinds of politicians try to use it for their advantage. And one other problem that we saw detected rather from focus groups that we were doing, it is that in recent year or half of the year, from the beginning of the year, the growing discomfort of the respondents speaking on such topics as protests, oppositional politicians, support for oppositional politicians, Navalny, and this happened as a result of the all kind of crackdown that we had on opposition and oppositional politicians, radical oppositional politicians, if you want, and it was immediately reflected in our surveys, with especially younger generations now very cautious to speak on this topic, and there is a question how it is reflected in the surveys themselves, but this is at least the issue to keep in mind. So I also want to share some results of our polling, and just to show how we use them, because we use it not only just to familiarize the topic with the actual figures. We think that it is moderate. We try to see the reflection of the governmental policy of the politicians' steps in the reflections in the public opinion research, and try to analyze and understand the situation. So what we saw during this campaign and prior to this campaign, this waning support for the authorities and the ruling party, and as the goal was to keep the constitutional majority for the United Russia Party, in these circumstances, it was only possible in not only mobilizing their supporters, but also demobilizing their opponents. And we saw it in the figures of who actually took part in the elections, and we saw that people who connected to the government, state employees, and so on and so forth, they were increasingly taking part, and they were forced and asked and persuaded and so on and so forth. And many opposition-minded people stayed at home. But I think it's important not only for the strategy of domination, of keeping power, but also how accurate public opinion polls in reflecting this situation, when the part of population is participating on an increasing scale and through the not exactly voluntarily, but persuaded and pressed to do so. How accurate can be public opinion polls? And actually, there are questions to this. I'm showing you the results of from all respondents, and that is exactly how the major pollsters were publishing it, those who were allowed to do so. But the result of the United Russia Party was not exactly accurate in every surveys, if we count from not all from all the respondents, but from those who voted or going to vote. But at the same time, we saw that in the exit polls, that we were not doing exit polls, other firms were doing them. But in exit polls and elections after the polling after the elections, polls after the elections, a big amount, up to 10%, and in Moscow even more, just refused to say how they were voting. And this is a new situation that we haven't seen before. So I'm not having that much time, so maybe I skip something and just maybe show you that the elections, they're troublesome elections, because they didn't result in the sorting out the conflicts that were in the society, but more, I would say, led to the polarization of public opinion, and polarization of the public sentiment, which again was reflected in the long-term surveys. And I think that long-term surveys are very important and very useful in analyzing the situation, how it goes. But also just a couple of words just to share with you, maybe it is interesting that how of course, it may be absolutely not nothing new here, but how open-ended question can work almost as focus group results. Yes, and it showed here the reasons of supporting different parties, and the one open-ended question, at least this topic, amounts to discussing these topics in focus groups with people. But focus groups, I only mentioned here probably and my presentation, the problem with focus groups that we saw in our electoral studies, but generally speaking as well, that of course online focus group not always work as well as ordinary focus groups, because they lack of this natural dynamism, and because still in online focus groups there are slightly different people who participate, more educated, more active. So this is the trouble, and we ourselves were eager to go back to the offline focus groups where, when appropriate and when it was possible. But my guess is that politicians, though, who had big stakes in the situation, were doing offline focus groups even during the high COVID pandemic months. So there is a lot of stomach within the population to do so, and of course with those who need them. So probably I will not speak further here. Thank you. I will be ready to answer your questions during the final session. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Denis. While our next speaker, Zarina, is preparing and begins to share her screen, I would like to thank you very much for this really interesting and very comprehensive presentation. You spoke not only about results, but also about methodological peculiarities, about the political environment factors, and this has given us really a very detailed snapshot about the current situation in Russia with electoral surveys. I invite our colleagues who joined us in the audience to write questions to Denis, to write your comments for discussion in the chat. And Zarina, you are most welcome to start.
Yes, I just need to share my screen, so please stop sharing, Denis, and then I'll be able to do so. Thank you so much. Just a minute, a couple of minutes, and I'm ready. You see, right? My screen. Excellent. So thank you very much for this invitation, and I'm really delighted to be part of this WAPOR webinar. Let me organize my talk in three main directions. First, I will discuss the challenges for public opinion research in Georgia. Then I will speak about the case studies of the exit polls for the in the most recent elections. And finally, I will discuss the opportunities for public opinion polls in Georgia. Let me start with the challenges. So the fact that Georgia is a democratizing state and its political institutions are not democratically consolidated poses certain challenges to the public opinion research, because research organizations are frequently the subject of severe criticism by politicians from both sides, by the government and by the opposition. On the other hand, we have media organizations who are very much interested in using the poll data to produce news about politics, but while politicians are interested to influence them, and also the public opinion. I would say that one potentially significant political context factor in Georgia, in case of Georgia, is a great number of parties, which puts a burden on sampling to collect enough cases to make reliable and precise voter estimates and predictions for the smaller parties. And noteworthy is also the fact that the Georgian research organizations are not well suited to conducting good electoral research. Thus, political parties are always dependent on the service of the international and external organizations in analyzing the data that was collected by the local research organizations. So I would say that these factors may affect the credibility of the public opinion polls. So we political scientists agree that elections are the foundations for any kind of democracy. And here I would like to speak about three main sources of election data and data in Georgia. So all of this data, they all check the election results, but difference lies in who conducts them and how they are conducted. I would say these civil society organizations, one of the famous one in Georgia is that the International Society for Fair Elections and Democracy conducts the parallel vote tabulation that mainly checks the results that are published by the election administration. And during this process, this is called the PVT abbreviation. And during this process, observers are constantly present at the randomly selected polling stations, and they transfer data in real time by electronic means. And PVT provides information about the opening of the election polling stations, voting, vote count, quite in a systematic manner. And its analysis is based on the nationwide representative sample. While unlike exit polls, PVT does not rely on the information that is provided by the voters. So here, let me review the current recent election result that was published by the Central Election Commission. And we see when I speak about the multi-party system, you can say a lot of, but almost 40 political parties in Georgia. However, we have quite a lower threshold, electoral threshold, around 1%, and this is also contributes to this greater number. So proportional votes across Georgia shows that the two main leading political parties are in our political landscape. This is the ruling Georgian Dream Party and also the United National Movement, former ruling party, and 8% was received by the For Georgia, the party that was organized by the former Prime Minister Gaharia, who defected from the Georgian Dream, and current Prime Minister even blames that the runoff elections that we face in Georgia tomorrow is exactly for these reasons. If we look at the proportional votes in Tbilisi, there is a slight difference between these parties, but still these two main parties occupy and lead and polarize political landscape and also the social structures of the country. So if we look at the runoff elections that we will have it tomorrow, there are 19 municipalities and also the major cities, self-governing communities, and the most important competition. The competition is particularly decisive in Batumi, Kutaisi, Zugdidi, Sanaki, and Tel Aviv, which are very important cities because they contain a large portion of the voters, and also so obviously the capital city Tbilisi is the battleground because the UNM candidate rallied around him the smaller parties and created the so-called shadow cabinet that and assigning those small parties the role of the game changer. And the situation is so uncertain to the extent that the prime minister reminded to the opposition that if they win, then the ruling party controls the national budget. So that means that we can expect more polarization in case of Georgia. So now let's speak about into greater details about the case study exit polls that I'm going to discuss here. We all agree that there should be multiple exit polls in order to contribute to election coverage, inform and to have an information about voter preferences and make the election predictions, better election predictions. So some factors can affect public trust here because including the independence independence of researchers from political and other influences. And obviously, this could be a very challenging factor in case of Georgia, because all media that in Georgia, and the media and private channels are partisan, and they have this impact of political parallelism somehow. They also cooperate with different research organizations. For instance, if we start from the most recent elections, exit polls that were released by the Gorby, that is the pioneering Georgian research organization. From TV Medi, we see that Georgian Dream leads in this race, and it almost takes 48%. There is a specific study-specific information about this exit poll. 120 precincts, 48 polling stations in Tbilisi, sample of 11,000 people, and margin of error 3%. Why I mentioned 3%? Because according to the Georgian legislation, the margin of error could not be higher than 3%. So a little bit strange provision in our legislation. So here we have also mayor's election results provided by TV Media and Gorby that shows that the government candidate leads these elections. And why this percentage are politically important, because we had the so-called 19 April agreement, Charles Michel's agreement, that says that if the ruling party could not reach the 43% of the votes, then snap parliamentary election should be appointed, as there was some claims about voter election irregularities by the government. So the other exit poll result that were released by TV Tabery that is aligned with the United National Movements and uses the service of Ipsos Global. They published the exit polls about mayor's elections and proportional votes in Tbilisi, but not obviously across the Georgia, the whole data. So 4 hours ago, there was a very strange case in Georgia when the TV Tabery decided to cancel the contract with the Ipsos Global, because there was some kind of difference between the pre-election post that was published by Ipsos Global and also by this TV channel. So perhaps they will have some lawsuit. It's not clear again. And here we see that in case of the mayor's elections, almost the opposition and the government candidates are on par, while the United National Movement and in case of Georgian Dream could not reach the 43%. Another important TV channel is the TV Formula that partners with the Edison Research. And when I was trying to get more information about this exit polls, Edison Research was the only research organization operating in Georgia which provided me the detailed information about sampling errors, about the research design description, and other relevant information. Here again, we see that the Georgian Dream leads in this exit poll results for local elections, and finally they also released mayor's elections results and for the proportional votes in Tbilisi, in which Georgian Dream candidate again leads the mayor's elections, but and the same we can say about the proportional votes in Tbilisi. So now let's compare those results and think what could be the reasons of these quite contrasting findings. Obviously, we need more methodological information. For this contrasting findings is more not about proportional votes Georgia, but more about mayor's elections in Georgia. And before answering this question, let me also show you the previous election results for the parliamentary elections. This election is unique in case of Georgia because we used for the first time mixed proportional system, where 120 seats were elected by proportional votes and 30 was elected by majority and plurality. So in these elections, the results were really striking, how could we explain these? What our community says about these differences? So one of the major reasons are non-response rates and how the research organizations address this non-response error rates. So some research organizations are using weighting procedures to correct these errors. Some scholars suggest that accuracy is improved if the data is not adjusted for certain demography discrepancies, but pollsters have a trade-off, either using this weighting to reduce bias or lower their precision of their estimates. Another reason, we have a little bit different term in the Georgian context. They use the allocation term for weighting, and it causes some controversy as well. Another reasons what could contribute to these differences is the sampling methods used and also sample size, question wording, how the fieldwork was administered. And I'm outlining this point because there is a need and importance to advocate for the transparency initiative. For this reason, the Georgian Association for Public Opinion Research developed the Code of Professional Ethics, and Article 8 also kind of asks the polling organizations to disclose certain items when they conduct public opinion polls or exit polls. Let me give the example of the Edison research that gave us and kindly provided this information for the local elections. So they partner with TV Formula. The source of funding is defined by their contract. Date of the data collection is exactly the October 2, when the first round of the local elections held. Polling method, self-administered interviews, margin of sample ranges from 2 until 3% at the 95 confidence interval, and population is the Georgian citizens who have the right to vote. Geographic area excludes the Russian occupied territories, and sample size is around 165 precincts across Georgia and 76 in Tbilisi. So method of sampling is random sampling. So each voter has the equal chance to be part of this sample, and they use weighting procedures by gender, age, and regional parameters, and response rate for these elections was 38%. So the questionnaires they use are two main questions that helps us to understand the vote for which party voter voted and who was the voter's preferential candidate in the mayor's elections. And we also have some other demographic questions about gender, about age, about education and economic condition. So what could be the prospects and opportunities in Georgian reality is that we, in March of 2021, we established the Georgian Association for Public Opinion Research as a joint effort of the Elias State University and USAID, also Human Institutional Capacity Development, PMCG, and Institute of International IRA, International Republican Institute. We were really privileged and honored to cooperate with former WAPOR presidents, Professor Peter Miller and Professor Michael Traugott, who helped us to develop this code of ethics and also to give us right direction how to construct this association that hopes to promote and builds the research capacities. So what are our aims? Our aims are obviously to establish high quality scientific research, ethical, professional use, professional standards, and obviously we should be open, transparent, and kind of our main value should be impartiality and reliability in our research. This organization is university-based, and it's going to unite and somehow to give a platform, create platform for Georgian researchers and also research organizations in order to appease somehow this environment that exists between research organizations that are sometimes subject of severe criticism, and sometimes this criticism is unfair. But we at the same time are hoping to somehow encourage those organizations to be more transparent in their research. So if you have any questions that I missed to cover in my presentation, I would be really happy to answer them. And thank you again for this excellent opportunity to be with you this Friday night from Tbilisi.
Thank you so much, Zarina. This has been super interesting, super informative. I think we learned a lot about the situation with electoral service in Georgia. And I would like to thank you also for bringing in this very interesting aspect, the role of international and national professional associations of public opinion researchers in electoral surveys. And we now move from Georgia, from the east, we go back to the west to Poland. And I'm happy to give the floor to Mihalko Narovsky from the Polish Academy of Sciences. Please, Michal, you can start sharing your presentation.
I'm sharing my presentation. Actually, I will share my desktop. It would be best thing. And here, okay. Can you hear me and can you see my presentation?
Yes, we can see it. It's instead of conclusions.
Okay, yeah. Oh, sorry. Okay. So, so we have still in Poland, we have afternoon, I would say. And so my presentation is, this title is Mixed Modes and Mixed Results on Political Polling in Poland in the, so in the pandemic period. Actually, my title was in post-pandemic period because I proposed the title in September. It seemed to me that maybe it will be over. However, it seems like it's not, and we have a rise of COVID infection these days. So we are still fighting with pandemic. And okay, so plan of the presentation. So I would like to say a few words about bright and dark sides of electoral service in Poland, actually, and how it was connected to pandemic. And so, and then I will tell you at the last thing how to not get crazy with all these surveys and some confusion which we can have here. And my perspective would be a bit broader. So so what is important, so for my talk is that I used to work in Public Opinion Institute as a former manager of electoral survey projects, but currently I'm academic dealing with surveys, however, from academic perspective. So I will try to present some like a more broad view of the electoral service in Poland. And actually it will be also connected somehow to other, to previous presentations which we had today. So, so what are the bright sides of electoral service, I would say. So, so first thing, so what happened to electoral service after or during pandemic? So actually, we observed this very similar thing as in other countries. It was a shift away from face-to-face service. However, I would say that this process started before, and actually pandemic made an opportunity that it speed up a bit. So actually right now, when among companies which provide electoral service results, so the only polling institute is conducting just only face-to-face is Kantar Public. Most of them, they do CATI or CAWI internet service. However, interesting case is one of the oldest organizations in Poland, CBOS, which is the Center for Public Opinion Research. They introduced mixed mode during pandemic, and actually it's kind of, this is an example of kind of positive side effect of pandemic, if we can say. So what was the case? So a few words about this case of CBOS and what happened with them. So before pandemic, they were actually the only institution conducting study using random samples selected from National Register, and they did it in the face-to-face interviews mode. And actually, like in all the rest of the market was based, so was relying on either quota sampling or random route sampling. So actually, CBOS was the one which was the purest in methodological way of getting the sample. However, the problem which they have was the same as everywhere, the low response rate. So it was about circa 25–30% of the initially selected sample. This is what they usually were able to get. However, the pandemic and the situation with lockdown made an opportunity for some innovations. So actually, they stay with random samples selected from National Register, so nothing changed here. However, they introduced the alternative interview modes. So actually, when the interviewer met respondent, then respondent could make a choice whether it should be CAPI face-to-face or CATI or internet survey with web, so in the CAWI internet survey. And actually the effect was that the quality of the sample of CBRS increased, because like more or less the same people, the same number of response rate remain with face-to-face interviews, but they managed to increase CATI. They managed to mobilize some respondents using CATI and also CAWI. So altogether, the response rate increased to almost half of the initial sample. So this is kind of negative, so like a side effect, positive side effect of pandemic. And okay, another issue is, which is like a bright side of the electoral service in Poland. So the issue was, so we could do something like a quality measure. So in the way how well electoral service predicted election results, which we had in 2020. So actually, just to correct Ksenia, in 2020 we had only presidential elections. Parliamentary we had the year before, so it was before pandemic. However, so it was great opportunity to check. So the presidential elections were in summer, so during the pandemic, during the lockdown, and then it was like a good way to check the quality of service at the time. So what happened? So that after some changes because of pandemic, what was the quality of them? So how well they predicted the electoral support for particular candidates. So let's compare this support. And here I have presentation. So here in this slide you see. So here we have candidates in columns. In rows, you have particular polling institutions, and the last line is official results of the elections. So also in the last column, you see a technique which was presented, so which was applied. So actually here in green, I indicated those results, those cells which were within plus minus 2 percentage points from the official results. So as we see here from this broad picture, like the whole, we can say that the whole sector of public opinion research or electoral service in Poland passed the exam, because like we see the vast majority of green cells. Also, there are like two institutions which were quite correct in terms of all candidates. So this is so in each case we have their results of electoral survey. It was the last survey before the election. Yes, so they were quite accurate somehow, like in general in giving the results of election. Okay, so it was about, sorry, oops. So it was about the bright sides. However, I think there are also some dark sides, not necessarily connected to the survey agency, but somehow connected as well. So first thing is some confusion, which we observe, confusion among public and confusion among how the results live their life when they go to media. So actually here you see, so the example from the last days, here you see results of electoral surveys from mid-October, so from last weeks. You have different companies, different institutes of public opinion, and then in rows right now you have particular parties. And actually these are the results which are presented day after day. So actually they were almost in the same week. So first thing is that they do vary somehow. The results, they vary, and actually these are the numbers which are present in media. So the public is interested mainly in these numbers. These numbers are cited like in public discourse. So actually in case of ruling party, we see some changes. They are not so, maybe they're not so huge. However, in terms of second party, civic coalition, we see that one day it was 26, then the day after it was 15, support 15, then 25, 26. Also in case of the third party, 15, 19, 10, 13. So actually, so in these two cases, we have more than half or more of the half of the change support. And as I said, these results were presented day by day. So, so in public discourse, there is like a opinion which is prevalent, like this, that these companies are crazy. They day by day they provide some completely different results. What should we do with it? And however, the thing is that what is the most important is not presented in media actually, or it's presented in like a very small letters at the end of the article. So there are many differences between these surveys, and actually it would be strange if they would be the same. So first thing is that they vary so much in the level of undecided voters, as we see from 23 to 0. So actually these numbers, it's very hard to compare these numbers when you have such discrepancies in terms of undecided voters. Also, they vary in terms of technique. Each of them is made using different technique. Another issue which is somehow made some confusion or some chaos in the way how it is reported is timing of fieldwork and timing of publication. So here you see the results, in the order how they were published. However, this survey and this one, they started earlier than the first one. So actually, because of technique, use technique as Kapi and here was Kati. So actually, let's say the survey published on 15 was later than the one from 13. However, it was referred, the fieldwork here and here started much before the fieldwork in this study, in the study from the first column in terms of counter. So actually, but it seems like no one cares about these details, and actually, quite often these numbers are interpreted as changes like from day to day. And because they are present in media as news, so these numbers are compared without taking care about the issue. And actually, this is what Paulina said in her presentation. Then something which is so I like this idea that public opinion research passport, which you introduced in Czech Republic. So something similar would be much needed in Poland. Okay. Another thing, which okay, so just to conclude that, so these results presented there should be different from each other because of various techniques, various polling institutions, and various fieldwork, which is not coherent to publication times. Actually, they has to differ. It would be strange if they would be the same. Okay, and the thing which is a bit hard to say. However, I think that we have some problem in Poland. Maybe not so much, but there are some rumors already. So there is some accusations about favoring particular camps. So I made a story about old good times when I was engaged in this business of electoral surveys. So I would say that at that time, so I was working there from 2004 to 2008-9. So at the time, for us, it was like no way of cheating, no way of providing fake results. So one thing could be a bit strange to say, but I would say that seriously, we were ethical at the time. But the other thing is that even so, there was a market of trustworthy public opinion institutes and results. So if we provide some results favoring particular political option, it would be easily detected that our results are biased in some direction. And actually, currently, there are accusations of favoring particular political camps or paying by political parties for results indicating higher support for given option. And I don't mean politicians who are complaining about results, because we experience it always. We are experiencing this thing with politicians. It was quite often the case that when the same politician one day when his results were declining, was accusing us for bad quality of research, and when his or her results were increasing, then our data were used for support of the quality of given political party. I mean that these voices appear in serious weekly opinion magazines among people from research community, among people from academia, and actually I think that something is wrong going on, and I don't know that, as I wrote here, I don't know the truth. So whether it is, whether something is, whether there are some fake results produced or not. However, I think we, the research community, must have a problem. We have a problem, and we must do something about it. Yeah, and instead of conclusions, so of course it's like it's very like general thing and very obvious to you that we need to look at general trends, house effects, technique effects, and if would be interested in what is the dynamic of electoral surveys and results of particular parties in Poland through the electoral surveys, I would recommend like to look at the website of my colleague and friend Ben Stanley, who created a project called Pulling the Polls. So actually, what Ben is doing is he's pulling polls of polls. So I will show you what do I mean. So here's Ben Stanley website, which I highly recommend to go there. And you have this pulling the polls. So what my colleague Ben is doing, he's combining data from various survey and creating out of it, it's like a median position, median support for particular parties using data from various sources, various polling institutions. And also what Ben is doing here is he's applying some Bayesian statistics, some crazy stat here is employed, in which support for each party is estimated together with some confidence intervals. Also with here, what we can see here are probability. So for each party, we have probability of given results for given party according to data from several polling institutions merged together. And also what you can find on Ben's website is trend area, so the trends of supporting together with confidence intervals, trend of supporting for particular parties, and also you can find here trends of support for in case of each polling institution. When you have polling institution, also together with a technique used. So actually, it's a nice place. So nice place to see what's going on in Polish politics and what is visible in electoral surveys in Poland. And actually, when we see at this picture and this picture, and there is not so much chaos. There is no so mess, and we should not get crazy with Polish politics. Okay, so I think that where I am. I think that is all what I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Michal. Thank you very much. It was really very, very interesting to see such an interesting dynamic in Poland, and what you said about this possibility for the respondents to select a mode of interview and how to increase the response rate. That was a really very interesting result. We still have about 5 minutes left. We started 3 minutes later, so we might borrow extra 3 minutes. We have some questions in the chat. I think Paulina has already answered to the question that was addressed to her. There was a question from a colleague, I believe it's for Zarina, about the non-response rate and how it can be avoided. But also, if anybody from the audience would like to talk, please raise your hand and we will give you a word. If there are no immediate reactions, we also have one question in the Q&A from Claire Durand. I was surprised to see that the use of mixed modes seems to be spread in a question for the presenters, and particularly where mixed modes are applied. This is Czech Republic and Poland. Do you think the use of mixed modes is the future of electoral polling? Who would like to take this question and look into the future?
Paulina, will you try?
I don't think it's a future. It will be a very hard because
I think we can't hear you, Paulina.
Yeah, can you check your microphone, please?
can you hear me?
Yeah, maybe you put it a bit closer to your mouth.
Okay, now.
Yes, better.
Okay, thank you. So I'm not sure if it is a future, and if it is, it will be really a hard future because the last year we were inventing mixed mode, which would be suitable for us, and we are still not successful, or we are not. We were not successful to, and the results are really mixed. But what we see in the Czech Republic, that maybe the mixed modes are sort of transition, or a transition to actually online polling. What we see now, and what we are planning to do is build a probability-based panel where somehow we would engage also those people who are not online yet. But in my opinion, as we are building the time series and in a, let's say, quite a quick way, we have one survey a month. So the mixed mode has many disadvantages. Also, there are not the comparability of the questions. You can't pose all the questions in KT and online, etc. So I think maybe the answer is it depends. It depends for what. For something, mixed modes can be a really good solution. For other things, no.
Thank you so much, Paulina. Michal, do you want to add something?
I just quickly that actually in Poland it seems so. In case I can say about Polish case. So here we have still mixed mode could be a necessity, I would say, because like let's say at the moment penetration of the internet in Poland is about 80%. So still we have some group of potential respondents who cannot do web interview. But would be happy to do it so maybe they would, so if so, then would be able to do it with interviewer or a paper questionnaire. So also, but on the other hand, there are also some segments of respondents which are difficult to reach by respondents, by interviewers to have a face-to-face interview, but then would be possible for them to do it in web. So actually, in this moment, I would say it's kind of even necessity to be able to have as much as possible of the initial samples.
Thank you so much, Michal. I don't see any additional questions coming in. Well, in that case, it's Friday evening, Friday afternoon for most of us. I would like to thank all speakers and all colleagues who joined us in the audience for attending. I would like especially to thank speakers for the absolutely brilliant work that you have done on your presentations. I believe it was one of the most informative webinars through the WAPOR history. Thank you so much.